there's an interesting dynamic going on, and we've seen it kind of reemerge. It's this cycle where whenever Fox News or generally more moderate Republicans take some stance against Trump, and you'll see what I mean, why I'm bringing up those two groups and characters in the same breath. When they do something that enrages the Trumpsters, it kind of reignites what people call the Republican Civil War. This battle between the old guard Republican or more establishment Republican, and then the Trumpster Republican, the more MAGA Republicans. And so you have this both in the legislative world, or I should say in the government world. So you have people like Marjorie Taylor Greene feuding with people like whoever you want, Mike Pence or Mitt Romney, people who are seen to be still conservative, all of those things, but maybe more establishment, a little less conspiracy theorist, whatever. And so they have this feud going on in government, but they also have it in media. And we're seeing this because Fox News tends to be making a pretty logical decision that they want to give airtime and give energy and somewhat support towards more candidates and more individuals than just Trump. Because, of course, while he was president, they could just be completely sycophantic to him, and they would get all the benefits that they could ever want from that. Access to him, his supporters will support them. But you're seeing in America, there's a pretty good chance that Trump won't be the guy pretty soon. After all the damage that's been done to him, poll numbers showing that the Republican Party isn't completely on his side anymore, it may be the end of the Trump era pretty soon. So they kind of want to go out and support through their coverage some other people so that when the time comes, if someone does take over this movement, they have a foot in with them and they've gained some loyalty from those individuals. It's all kind of gross, but it's really just Fox News doing what's best for them, seeing the political landscape changing and still being, normal Fox News towards Trump. They're not criticizing him super aggressively, but we showed a few clips in previous segments of Fox News during their daytime coverage being more willing to express how damaging the things coming out of the January 6th committee have been. And then we've seen the little back and forth between Fox and Friends and Trump, because Fox and Friends showed a poll showing Ron DeSantis doing really well against Trump in polling, and Trump didn't like that. So a couple different things, I guess, stacked on top of each other make it look like Fox News is turning a little bit on him, even though I don't think it's super significant. But we're seeing this broadly now being a narrative where other more far-right media networks like Newsmax are trying to play it up and say, we're the true pro-Trump network. Fox News isn't anymore. And now what we have for you today is another example of this. Steve Bannon saying in a conversation with Rudy Giuliani that Fox News gave more coverage to Mike Pence instead of Donald Trump, and why are they doing this, and they're betraying, whatever, and then asks Rudy Giuliani's opinion on all of this. And so you can see that they're buying into this narrative as well and believing that Fox News is no longer as pro-Trump as they should be, and continuing this feud between the really, really, really radical right and just like the normal radical right. And it's really interesting to watch, and I'm totally for it. I will say before we play this clip, I'm not saying this to be insulting or to be silly. I genuinely don't understand. Why does anybody want to hear from Rudy Giuliani anymore? Genuinely, I'm being as serious as possible. Why does anyone, right, left, or center, want to hear what Rudy Giuliani has to say? I have no clue. After all the embarrassment publicly, where even reporting shows that Trump was embarrassed at Rudy Giuliani's public endeavors during the 2020 election, why people want to hear from him, I don't know. But here is Steve Bannon laying out the situation about how Fox News isn't loyal enough and asking Rudy Giuliani's opinion.
Would Roger Ailes tolerate not having? The other day, Donald Trump returns to Washington, D.C. for the first time since he left to give a keynote address on law and order and anarchy in our major cities. Mike Pence gives a 17-minute bromides for like a high school kid cut and paste. Absolutely ridiculous. They cover 17 minutes and they blow a commercial break, which is like a mortal sin over at Fox, right? They blow a commercial break to cover all of that. Why? You know that. Why are they have their thumb on the scale for a loser and a coward like Mike Pence, and they're up against and trying to defeat again Donald J. Trump, Rudy Giuliani?
Well, I mean, they were doing it back then before they realized Trump was going to win, and they wanted to go with the winner. I mean, that whole thing with Roger was a setup because they thought they were going to have to move to the left. So I think that's where they are now. I mean, how could they not have me on September 11th? They went through September 11th as if I never existed. I mean, it's amazing. I mean, they're part of the make up history the way you want it to be a network.
I don't know where that response went on the part of Rudy Giuliani. Bannon was asking you, dude, why they didn't give more airtime to Trump and they gave airtime to Mike Pence. And your response leads you to, why didn't they bring me on during 9/11? Dude, again, I think they recognize this is why they haven't had Rudy Giuliani in a super long time. You're a mess. You are a mess. Even if they're totally fine with the policies that you would push for or the individuals that you would support, they just don't want you making a fool of yourself. You've had so many moments where you publicly embarrass the platform that you're on and the people who are around you and yourself, most importantly. And so I understand why even Fox News wouldn't want Rudy Giuliani any day, even though he did play a big role in the response to 9/11. I still don't think they want him being a liability on their network, giving him airtime. But to the point that we, originally were addressing with this clip, I just think Fox News sees the polling. They see that it's about 50-50 now in the Republican Party, where it used to be 80-90 for Trump, and now it's just 50 or less, where one of the polls we saw, a majority of Republicans don't want Trump to be the nominee, and they're thinking, listen, for our self-interest, for the purposes of building our own audience, we can't just be sycophantic to Trump, because when 90% of the Republican Party is for Trump, then all you got to do is show them you love Trump and they'll love you. But if it's only 50-50 or even less for Trump, then you have to diversify a little bit and mix up who you're giving positive airtime to and try to appeal to different segments of that Republican base. So I understand why they're doing it. I don't think it's super significant. It's not like they're criticizing him to the extent that they should be, but it is nevertheless sparking a massive kind of feud within the party of the really radical right and the normal right, which I think is radical. Also, and then I think there's kind of three groups. There's like the DeSantis, which is radical right, but not Trump. And then there's the Trumpsters. But then kind of like all the way closer to the middle is the Liz Cheney, Adam Kinzingers, who I have some respect for. I don't have any respect for the radical right who's not Trump or the Trumpsters, but I do have some respect for the Republicans who are still conservative, all of those values they still believe in, and many policies we would disagree about, but they have some strict principles that they've kept themselves to, and they've stood up for the correct thing, and they've been willing to recognize reality and all of those things, which I do respect. But anyways, definitely I cheer on this feud, because the more they fight, the weaker they are, and the better chance we have of beating them in elections.